morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I couldn't be more excited to be standing in front of you talking about how technology can help publishers. Now, I think there is a fundamental part of the internet that all of you know about, which is advertising. There's no question that advertising is the heart of most of the largest internet companies. Google, Facebook, certainly. But if you look down the stack of the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, even a company like Alibaba is funded almost entirely by advertising. Their Alimama business produces all the revenue. The transactions they do on their e-commerce platform are free. So we live in the middle of an internet powered by advertising. Let me tell you how it works, although all of you, of course, know. There are really three different major components. It's a three-sided market. We have marketers who pay money to publishers, and that money funds content, which, of course, consumers enjoy, whether that's news or games or other services. And then we show ads to those consumers. They then give their attention to the marketers and hopefully go buy their products, whether in stores or online. And this cycle perpetuates itself. The more consumers buy products because of those ads, the more money marketers pay to publishers, and the more content publishers can produce. And they hire journalists, they hire game developers. This is a virtuous cycle that we need to foster. At the same time, we today face significant challenges to this virtuous cycle. We know today that when publishers find that they're struggling to make enough money to pay for their content producers, one obvious reaction is to put more ads on the page. Of course, that's a problem for marketers. They don't necessarily want all of the ads sitting at the bottom of the page. They don't want to worry about viewability. And they add verification code. And we get into almost an arms race. Who can put more ads that the marketers are willing to pay for? And after some time, after some part of the cycle, guess what happens? Consumers get fed up. And they start blocking ads. And now we have a real problem. Now, do we need more ads? Do we put less quality content together? What can we do other than either lay off some of these journalists or content producers or throw on more ads? There's not that many choices. And all of a sudden, our virtuous cycle becomes a vicious cycle. And I don't need to tell anyone in this room that this is a real problem. We see it because huge numbers of consumers are blocking ads. And this puts the business model of the internet at risk. Now, AppNexus is a company I founded in 2007 with a pretty simple purpose, a very modest purpose, shall we say. We were going to make the internet better. We were going to create a better internet. Now, of course, as an ad technology company, the way we do that is by trying to foster better advertising that will allow us to create a better internet. Our job is to find ways to turn the vicious cycle back into a virtuous cycle. About a year ago, we split our company into two different business units. We have one group called the Advertiser Technology Group, which, surprisingly, builds technology for advertisers, and another business unit which builds technology for publishers called, creatively, the Publisher Technology Group. Now, these two businesses are independent. It's very important for us that we remain completely unbiased, so we don't have any sort of connection points aside from being on the same underlying technology platform. But one nice thing about that is it means we have over 300 people around the world fully dedicated to building technology for publishers. Now, our Publisher Technology Group mission is to build the best global technology platform for publishers to deliver a better internet through seamless advertising experiences. Let me break that down into its components. So global is pretty obvious. We're all around the world. We're in Latin America, we're in Asia Pacific, we're of course in North America, and we're here in Europe. Technology platform is important to us. We are not a media company. We don't have a large ad network. We don't have people who sell media into agencies. We just build technology. And that's fundamental to not having channel conflict with our partners. And seamless advertising experiences are something you're going to hear us talk about a lot today. How can we make the advertising experience so frictionless for consumers that they never have that moment where they say, gosh, I need an ad blocker. One of my favorite ads, this is a joke, on the internet is that spinny little circle before a video loads. Do you guys know what advertiser that is that has that spinny circle logo? They're killing it. They're making a ton of people really upset. And that 3 to 5 seconds where you see that spinny little thing while your ad loads is exactly the moment that consumers say, you know what? I'm going to go to a different site. I'm going to choose a different app, or I'm going to install an ad blocker. We have to solve that problem. And it's not just latency. Every time an ad hijacks a web page, usually on a mobile device, and forces you to go to somewhere else, or hijacks you to the App Store, you lose faith, not just in the site, but in the advertising experience overall. We have to fix that. And so for us, this is core to our mission. How can we help publishers ensure that consumers have a world-class experience on their site, whether advertising or not? That's our job. So I want to talk a bit about how we do this and how you can help make sure that you're part of this virtuous cycle. About a year ago, and maybe 6 months ago, we officially launched this. We rolled out what we call the AppNexus Publisher Suite, 4 different products that combine to allow publishers to solve some of the fundamental challenges with advertising that Nigel mentioned. Now, we spent about $250 million just on acquisitions to put this together. We have a huge team, as I mentioned, who's building our own core technology around this. And so if you look at these pieces, we have an SSP to help with programmatic monetization. We have YieldX Analytics, which is the best analytics and forecasting product in the world. Over 60 of the largest 100 global digital publishers use YieldX for forecasting, regardless of what ad server they use. We've built a brand new ad server, which may surprise you. It's 2016. Why do we need a brand new ad server? And the answer is because when you have programmatic, when you have mobile, when you have the complex challenges of audience forecasting, it requires an entirely new way of thinking about the ad server. Trying to tack those things on to a legacy ad platform gives you a mess, a bunch of disconnected pieces that don't actually drive yield for publishers. And you'll hear us talk a lot more about how these pieces fit together for, I think, an extraordinary outcome for publishers. And the last thing here is audience extension. Many publishers are finding that they can actually take their core audience and find more inventory across the exchange landscape. This is all part of the same product for us, the same suite. So you don't need a separate tool, a separate DSP to go do this. And together, what we found is that when publishers adopt this suite, they make a lot more money. And at the end of the day, that's our job, to make money for you. Now, some things you may not know. You may think, well, it's great that you built a brand new product, but why would I ever trust my business to it? Well, even though it's only been 6 months since we rolled this out, we've had a number of global publishers not just sign to work with us, but actually to migrate their inventory onto our new ad server successfully. If you haven't seen the press releases, we're talking about world-class brands, Schibsted, Microsoft, MI9 in Australia, Le Figaro in France. And in fact, Alexei Markom from Figaro will be here later to talk to you about how this process has gone. What I want you to take away from today is that there is a real alternative to DFP in AppNexus. There's no risk here. This works. You can migrate. We have an entire team of people who will help you make a seamless migration. And you can talk to our clients, and they'll tell you this is a platform that not just works, but makes their businesses better. Now, that's not the only thing we've been working on for the past year. We, of course, are deeply focused on programmatic monetization. That's the core of what AppNexus has always been good at, but we've made it better in the past year. Now, has anyone here heard of header bidding? Only a few. Okay, well, I'll explain it to you. Let me ask a different question. Is anyone here awake? Okay, they're laughing. Header bidding, obviously a big thing. This is the idea that instead of trusting your inventory to your ad server, usually DFP, which is a closed platform, you put a little snippet of JavaScript and wrap that tag. And then you don't have to go pay this Google tax. You can actually get all of these different demand sources to bid onto your inventory and pay you directly. And you get all the bids without any filtering or Google bias. Now, if you talk to Google, they'll tell you, hey, AdX is the best exchange platform in the world. You can trust us. And I think all of us would love to believe Google's motto, don't be evil. But don't forget, they didn't say, don't tax publishers. That's not their motto. And so, what do you think happens when you pull some programmatic inventory out of DFP and you actually allow it to run directly into the exchange ecosystem? Every publisher who tries this finds that they make 20% more money, 40% more money, 50% more money. Now, I don't understand that because Google's a great technology company. I'm sure they could connect to the buyers just as well as we do. But somehow, just by taking your inventory out of DFP and putting it right on the page, you print money. It reminds me of, anyone seen the movie Wizard of Oz? A few people? Okay, so you're in Kansas, it's black and white, a tornado comes, and all of a sudden Dorothy finds herself in this colorful land with munchkins, you know? The yellow brick road. And that is what it feels like when you step out of the Google world. She liked Kansas, it was fine. It was a dust basin, right? She didn't know, you know? But once she was in Oz, here's this incredible world. Now, we won't talk about the Cowardly Lion or the Scarecrow. Other people can share those with you. But that's what I want you to think about is, most of us have lived in this world where we're stuck in Google Kansas, right? We think it's great, but once you put the header tag on the page, you see the possibilities. There's little munchkins singing to you. That's only if you install the AppNexus header bidding tag that you get that. So we've been investing in this for a long time. In fact, we invented header bidding back in 2009. We've built some cool tools. So this is Header Bid Expert. What this does, and actually you can install this on Chrome today. It's free. You just go to the Chrome extension store and you click on it. And it'll actually show you on any web page all of the different bidders who are buying into the header. And one thing you'll notice from this is, look who's the longest time lag here. DFP takes 3 seconds to return ads here. Those header calls aren't adding latency. And that's really important. You're going to hear from Google that header bidding adds all this latency, it destroys user experience. Install this yourself and see. I'm not making this up. What we find is that header bidding doesn't add noticeable latency. What it does, though, do is, I've said this before, it makes a lot of money. So that's really important for you to play with. Now up here you see a headline, AppNexus strikes back. Now anytime we have a headline that sounds like a Star Wars movie, you know it makes me happy, right? Although I guess that would make us the Empire. So our theory here, now some of you may have heard of Google's Exchange Bidding Dynamic Allocation Initiative, or EBDA. It's a great acronym. Google wants you to stay in Kansas. Google wants to tell you, no, don't even try putting the header tags there. Trust us, we're going to give you something that's almost as good. Now, I can't tell you all the details, but of course, if this were an open, transparent program, they wouldn't ask us to sign an NDA, right? Why do we have to sign an NDA to even find out what this program is? Well, I can't tell you anything. But I ask you this. When Google calls you and says, try EBDA, ask them 3 questions. Are there any fees? Do I get every single penny, or do I have to pay an AdX tax? If there's an AdX tax, I guarantee you're not going to make as much money as if there's not. Number 2, are there any demand restrictions on buyers? Is there any demand that you're not letting these buyers run on my inventory? Because guess what? If there are any demand restrictions, it's not going to make you as much money. And then the third question is really easy. Can I try it with header bidding? Let me just see which one makes me more money. Run the test. Coke, Pepsi. I guarantee you're going to make more money with header bidding. So, but try the user experience. Does it slow down my page? How does this actually make my business better at Google? Now, I don't mean to diss Google, because I think they're a great company in many ways, but here in the DoubleClick universe, they are doing everything possible to use their monopoly on DFP to force everyone to put inventory into AdX, into GDN, into their media business. And we're not going to let that happen. Not because we don't like Google, but because our commitment, our mission, is to make publishers more money. And by the way, our business is growing like crazy. We have 600 publishers globally using our SSP, which we really launched about a year ago. So this is a huge growth area for us. It's great technology, but it's growing because we're making publishers more money. Now, this isn't just for desktop. Now, the computer scientist in me hates this slide because there is no header in mobile apps. technically. But it's the same idea. We call it mobile price check or pre-bid. The idea here is that why can't you do the exact same thing in a mobile app that you do in desktop? Why can't you just make a quick check to the exchange and find out what kind of money there is for you directly? It turns out that in mobile, RTB has a huge tax. And in this case, it's not just from Google. Companies like Mopub charge huge fees, often non-transparent, meaning you don't know what they're charging the buyer. And so if you just put this little snippet of JavaScript, just like in the web world, you actually get more money because you get money directly from buyers. Now, I don't think most publishers realize that this is here and it works, but I strongly encourage you to try mobile pre-bid, and please call it mobile pre-bid, not mobile header bidding, but this is another way we're going to see real changes. RTB hasn't worked in mobile. Should I say mobile? Fine. Let's restart the slide. Just kidding. No, header bidding hasn't worked, or RTB hasn't worked in mobile because of the tax. The amount of money, 40% of all dollars spent by the buyer goes straight into the pockets of the mobile SSPs. And that's before all the rest of the taxes. And there's no way it's going to work for buyers. So encourage all of you to try this. AppNexus continues to innovate in mobile, and there's a ton of publishers globally, a ton of apps with the AppNexus SDK installed. So please give this a check. Now, I do think it's important right now for me to give you a quick update in our media business. Now, I did say before that we don't have any media salespeople, and that we don't take IOs. So far, the stats don't look so good. But one thing I think you'll be very impressed with is the vast volume of money we are taking directly from agencies. Still zero. Now, you may have seen these presentations where they say that in most markets, including I think the UK, Google and Facebook now take upwards of 65% of all digital dollars, 75 or 85% in some markets. Well, guess what? AppNexus is at zero. It sort of makes us sad that we don't show up in these presentations. Now, I'd like to ask all of you a question, because at least in the US, we don't see this. Where is Google's owned and operated display inventory? Can anyone point me to it? I've never seen it. So when Google goes and gets a big chunk of budget and says, hey, we're huge, whose inventory is it that they're selling? I mean, I know they have search and they have YouTube, but in our world, they're running a $10 billion ad network. And I'm pretty sure that's your inventory. Every time you sell inventory to Google, they get credit. I hear from agencies all the time. They're like, well, why waste my time buying? I mean, Facebook's huge and Google's huge, and I don't really need to buy from anybody else. But isn't that a direct conflict? Don't you look small because you're making Google look big? We believe that it's a fundamental conflict of interest for us. How can you differentiate your business if we're out there telling agencies our story? So this is an interesting tension. And I know, of course, Google writes big checks. And in Kansas, those checks look big. But if you step out of that bubble, what I think you'll find is that there's a lot more money out there for publishers willing to take that risk and to jump into this world where you actually find an independent partner. I don't want to make this a sales pitch for us. I'm just encouraging you to ask these basic questions about whose interests your technology partners actually are looking out for. Now, one thing that's very cool about this, though, is that across Europe, in a partnership with Microsoft, we've helped them take 10 markets fully programmatic. What this means is that they're not selling to agencies either. We've actually lifted programmatic yield so high that they're making just as much money by selling programmatically as they were with a bunch of salespeople. Now, for most of your core markets, I think it's really important that you still differentiate and have deep relationships with agencies. What we're finding, though, is that outside of those core markets, with a little help from what we call supply evangelism, which is a team of people, just a handful, who go in and help trading desks understand how to set up deals and private marketplaces and things like that, we can drive extremely high yield for publishers. And more publishers are asking us to try this outside of their core markets. So for any of you who are here in the UK, who have some traffic overseas or outside of the UK, this might be something worth trying. And I think we're going to see this being a really important part of everyone's business, which is to focus all of your sales and marketing resources where you have the highest impact. And again, not being a media business, we can help you do that without any concern that you're taking money out of our pocket. I did talk about Europe. I talked about being a global company. Now, here in Europe, we have over 100 employees. Well, I should ask, did Brexit happen yet? So, okay, we still have over 100 employees in Europe. In a couple of weeks, not 100% sure, we'll have to change the slide. We have offices all across Europe. Obviously, London is our biggest. But one thing I think is really amazing is that when we were here last year, we only had 20 publisher clients across Europe. Our focus was really on some large core anchor clients in each market. But what we've done, as we've expanded our team and hired extraordinary services folks to help migrate publishers, is we've seen our European client base grow immensely. We now have 130 publishers across Europe. And I think that's going to grow a ton over the next 12 months. We're quickly becoming perhaps the largest independent partner for publishers in Europe. And we're completely committed to putting our team here. Probably know I spend a ton of time in Europe. Michael Rubenstein, our president, spends a ton of time in Europe. We've just hired some extraordinary leaders here. And we're going to be all over this market because we think it's so critically important to help European publishers stay independent and continue to produce world-class monetization for world-class content. Now, I do want to come back to one more thing before I close, which is this idea of user experience. We talked about this virtuous cycle, and we have to figure out ways to make this experience better for publishers. And we certainly are thinking about things like ad blocking directly, but indirectly, we can do things that directly help publishers get better experience for their users. We were surprised, because when we migrated Figaro onto the AppNexus Publisher Suite, we were expecting great results for monetization. We were hoping for a very smooth migration process. What we were surprised by was that when we switched all the tags to AppNexus, page latency dropped almost in half. Our ads were so much faster than what they were running that the overall user experience was improved significantly. So for anyone here who's a Figaro reader, without you doing anything, you got your news twice as fast. And this worked on mobile as well. Mobile. I'm going to practice that. So that's huge, and we're actually seeing this across other migrations as well, which was a surprise to us. We've always been obsessed about latency. We didn't realize how big a deal it was. And there's a whole bunch of small factors that contribute to that, but it's making a huge impact. I don't know how this has impacted ad blocking yet, but we do know that viewability of their ads increased because they loaded faster. We know that engagement's increasing. So we're seeing really amazing sort of follow-on impact to Figaro because of this. And again, Alexi will talk more about this later, I hope. Another thing we're very focused on is video. Our head of video technology, Eric Hoffert, will be out later to talk about this and give you some exciting live demos that might not work, although they always do. He always says that, and then they work. But what we can do now is actually roll out new video code that will load video dramatically faster. And there's a whole bunch of techniques we've used to compress the video supply chain and make video ads almost instantaneous. And this is critical for anyone who's trying to make money in video, is to make that experience seamless for consumers. And so we're continuing to push on ways to make ads faster and to make them better. And this ties us right back to my original point about this virtuous cycle. How can we, as publishers, as marketers, as consumers, participate in this better internet? I gave you a direct example about this connection between publishers and consumers. We can actually decrease latency and make pages load faster. I didn't mention this, but we've also been very focused on things like malvertising or malware that has a direct impact on consumers, where the co-chairs of the TAG, the IAB tag effort, we co-chair the anti-malvertising committee, and we're working on industry and governmental approaches to get rid of anything that can hinder the consumer experience. And our motto, which I'm proud of, is don't mess with grandma's computer. It's good. Now, so that's something we can definitely help with. Now, from the consumer to the marketer side, how do we get consumers to spend more money? We show more relevant ads, and we convince them not to block the ads. And again, I think there's a direct connection between all of these things. The better the experience we can give them, the better the outcome for marketers. And the last piece of this, of course, is how do we help marketers spend more with publishers? Publishers need better forecasting tools. Publishers need better viewability tools. And in fact, that's something we've worked on aggressively over the past year. We can forecast viewability in YieldX. We can provide guaranteed viewability deals on our programmatic platform. So that's something really important to us. But I think the most important part of this is that every single thing we do as a company is intended to make this entire cycle work. And then for publishers, we can make you a ton more money. And that allows this whole cycle to go. So everything I've talked about today comes back to this idea that if we can step outside of these legacy tools, if we can move away from an ad server that was built in the 90s, if we can move to a platform that was built for today's challenges for publishers, we can make a huge impact, not just for our own businesses, but for the entire internet. And so, perhaps not surprisingly, I believe the solution to the internet's problems boils down to better ad tech. Thank you very much.